aware, the infamous Durbin Amendment did exempt banks with lower than $10 billion in assets. That would not apply to Mr. Kim's bank. But for those, the Federal Reserve reported in 2021 that small banks and credit unions received 53.49% of total debit interchange fee revenue in 2019, $13 billion, even though they only conducted 35% of the total number of debit transactions. It turns out the infamous Durbin Amendment was a boon to the small banks and credit unions. Thank you. I believe Senator Tillis and Senator Washburn have worked, or Senator Blackburn have worked out an agreement.
Senator Blackburn.
Senator Black?
No, go ahead.
You need to go.
I'm going to stick around anyway.
You're going to stick well, thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to stay, Mr. Kim, let me come to you on this. I saw you shaking your head about banking profits, and let's continue with that. Do you want to?
Sure. I think those statistics, a lot of times banks look at their revenue as net interest income.
Okay.
And so I think that 30 or 40% applies if you but if you go to, you think about the grocer pays a lot for their costs. So it doesn't account for the cost of money. And so when you do that, the profit margin becomes lower.
All right. And Ms. Carrott, let me come to you. I've talked to retailers and heard from some retailers that talk about they have to eat this cost. And they say it's most harmful to smaller businesses, the mom and pops. And when I talk to people who are in the grocery and convenience store business, they talk a good bit about this because this is something that drives up the overall cost of doing business and compliance, correct?
Senator, yes, thank you. Just to put this in perspective, picking up on what was said earlier, we operate on about a 1% profit margin.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about how this contributes to this out-of-control inflation that we have. Because right now, inflation's at over a 40-year high. You've got the cost of milk and eggs and bacon and coffee. Coffee's up over 100% when you're buying a bag of beans. So talk a little bit about that added cost and the impact on the consumer, your consumer.
So the way the credit card swipe fees work is they're percentages.
Right.
When the price of goods go up, what's happening is the credit card companies are getting a higher percentage on a higher sale.
Right.
So that means there's more costs that we have to bear and pass along to our customers.
So that means the price on the shelf for a package of Oreos is going to cost more this summer.
That is absolutely correct.
When they're packing lunches for kids to go to camp and making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and putting a couple of cookies in there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Now, Mr. Kim, I want to talk with you. I had read the GAO study that talked about the harmful impact of the Durbin Amendment. And the comment was that it was one of the most harmful laws and regulations in terms of its negative impact on the availability of fundamental banking services. So give me the explanation of how this has adversely impacted the unbanked, the underbanked.
Yeah, so I would kind of come back to the idea that, a lot of the underbanked and unbanked, or not necessarily unbanked, underbanked would use debit cards. Would use debit cards. The underbanked would use debit cards, and that contributed to the revenues associated with those checking accounts and those services that we offer them. Those revenues went away, and it forced us to increase the costs on those accounts. And so what you saw in the banking industry was a decline in the amount of free checking that was offered. Now, the banking industry is resilient, and we figure out how to overcome things. And and over time, just like Ms. Corrett probably can do the same thing in her business. You figure out ways to overcome challenges, and now I think the banking industry has a good record of offering services to the underbanked, and so we've worked our way through
How
that.
did this affect your total customer mix? Did your customer base grow? Did it, as people moved to debit cards?
We probably saw sort of a just our own statistics. We probably saw sort of a stagnation there. So there's not as much appeal at the lower end where the big numbers are.
And so a change to the credit routing system what kind of impact would that have?
Again, I would say what that would do is reduce the money available associated with offering credit cards. It's kind of an expensive proposition for somebody our size, and it's been a declining profitability business for a number of years for a number of reasons: competition, regulation. It's it's the most regulated business we're in. We spend the most money on compliance officers and responding to regulators in that business. And there's a lot you can get in trouble if you do something wrong, and we get out.
Right. My time is expiring. Ms. Kirkpatrick, I've got a question for you, but as a courtesy, I will submit it because I want to know what your cost is because you accept the responsibility for loss, for fraud, for things of that nature. I'd like to know that percentage, what that means to MasterCard each year, how much that costs you.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Before I recognize Senator Hirono, I'd ask consent to enter into the record the report of the American Bankers Association